a 7-Up pound cake. So the first thing we're going to do is take our Bundt cake pan. I have a nice heavy sturdy one here, and we are going to grease it. If you've watched this show at all, you know that I make my own pan grease, and that's what I'm using here. I did have to mix it up a little bit because it's been sitting here. This is a cup of flour, a cup of shortening, and a cup of liquid vegetable oil, whipped in the mixer with the whisk attachment until it becomes thick. And then we're going to use it. The fun thing about a Bundt cake, the reason why I like to use a brush, especially here, is because it has a bunch of little grooves in the pan, and if you don't get grease in it, then you get cake stuck in it. And it doesn't come out. And that's never a fun thing. So, make sure you get your pan grease, or whatever you choose to use, inside every little nook and cranny. And that's on both sides, because you have to do the middle part too. And then we will get started with mixing our ingredients. So, the important thing to remember about a 7-Up pound cake is everything has to be at room temperature. That includes your 7-Up, your butter, your sugar, all of it. So we're going to start with 3 sticks of butter. By themselves, we are going to cream in the mixer for about 2 minutes. So once the butter is completely creamed, and it's not in 3 individual sticks, it's like one big glob again, we're going to add our sugar and our salt. So all we use is 3 cups of sugar and then 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And this is the part we are going to start out slowly mixing it, and then we're going to mix it on high for about 7 minutes. We want it to get light and fluffy. So we always start low to get all the ingredients incorporated before we put it on high so that all the sugar doesn't go flying out. While that is working, I'm going to work on cracking eggs. I like to crack my eggs in a separate bowl and not directly into the bowl that I'm using to mix, because if I get a shell in there, I can easily fish it out of this bowl. It's a lot harder to fish it out once you have batter started. So, we're going to start cracking eggs. This particular recipe takes 5 eggs. My husband will tell you I'm a show off because I like to crack eggs with one hand. These are also at room temperature. See that little shell in there? Easy just to pick it out. When you have a bowl full of sugar and butter, not so easy. Now we have about 6 minutes left on the creaming of the sugar, salt, and butter, and then we'll add the eggs to it. Okay, our butter and sugar and salt are light and fluffy. Notice even the butter isn't even yellow anymore. We are now going to add our 5 eggs, and we are going to mix again. And then we have 3 cups of cake flour that we're going to add slowly. You want to make sure that you don't over mix with the flour. The more that you mix, the more gluten comes out. The more gluten that comes out, the more rubbery your cake gets. So we just want to combine the flour just slightly. You'll notice that there's not a leavening agent in this. There's no baking powder, there's no baking soda. That's because we use 7-Up. So the carbonation in the 7-Up will create the light and airiness in the cake and give it the leavening factor that you need. Okay. Now we're going to add our 3 cups of cake flour, and we're going to do it in 2 batches just to make sure that it gets combined but not overmixed. So there's about 1.5 cups. Look, through, you can see how it's just combined into the rest of the ingredients. You see that? And then we're going to add the other cup and a half of the cake flour. Remember, cake flour, you can buy cake flour in the store, or if you're frugal like me, you just make it. For every cup of flour you need a tablespoon of cornstarch. And then mix it together, stir it together before you add it. Okay, so that flour is just combined, and that's exactly what we want. Then we're going to add a tablespoon of lemon extract and 3/4 of a cup of 7-Up. You can use Sprite, you can use Sierra Mist. You have to use something with carbonation, and we want that lemon lime flavor, which is why we're using the 7-Up. Get it all mixed together, and then we're going to pour it in our pan. We have taken our bowl out of our mixer. And now the first thing we want to do is stir up to make sure that we get all of the pieces at the bottom so that it's all incorporated in one texture. If you can tell, there's a little bit of sugar and a little bit of butter that mixed up and stuck at the bottom. The mixer didn't get it all the way. And that's because we don't turn it on high to incorporate the flour. We do it lightly. So stir it up by hand to make sure you get everything off the bottom. And then we're going to pour it in our bundt cake pan. Now I put our bundt cake pan on a cookie sheet before I put it in the oven. That way if it overflows on the cookie sheet and not on my oven. Because the hardest thing to clean in my house is my oven. So this is going to cook in a 315-degree oven for 75 to 85 minutes. We'll check it. Use the toothpick test to make sure that it's ready. And then we will let it cool. And then we have a glaze to go over it, which also incorporates that 7-Up, so you get the lemon lime flavor. So the other thing with bundt cake pans is if you shake it, you'll make sure that the batter is spread evenly throughout the pan. Now we're going to put it in the oven, and we'll check back in about 1 hour and 15 minutes. Our cake is now out of the oven. We're going to use it would normally be a toothpick test, but my bundt cake pan is really deep, so I'm going to use it's actually a fondue fork to make sure that the inside is cooked. And when it comes out clean, that means it is cooked all the way through. Now we're going to let this cool for about 10 minutes and then flip it out of the pan and onto a serving platter. And then it's going to cool for 2 hours. We're going to make a glaze and then drizzle it over the top. So our 7-Up pound cake is out of the oven. It's been cooling for about 45 minutes. Now we are going to flip it over onto our cake pan, and then we're going to put it in the refrigerator to cool. And then we're going to make a drizzle for it. There we are. Now it's time to make the glaze for our 7-Up pound cake. I have 2 cups of powdered sugar. I'm going to add a tablespoon of lime juice. And 3 tablespoons of 7-Up. Just need to mix that together. Get all the chunks of the powdered sugar to break apart. And I did it in this measuring cup because it has a spout. It'll make it easier to drizzle over the top. Okay. So all we're going to do you can make a design with it if you want, or just... One of the fun things about a bundt cake is that any glaze or icing that you put on tends to pool in the middle, and then it's going to harden. So every piece that you cut, you get that chunk of glaze in the middle. And there we are.